We are live.
Take two.
Take two. Yes, we had some technical difficulties. So, welcome back to the My Veteran Experience podcast. And on this podcast, we speak to veterans and military families about their experiences in and around the military and how it impacts kind of what they do today, and talk about their journey as well. And real excited and honored to have Lieutenant General Robert Boomer Milstead, United States Marine Corps retired, with me today. And thanks for being here, sir.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Both times.
Yeah. So the first question I ask everybody is, tell us what you want people to know about you.
Yeah. I'd like to be remembered as a person. I'd like to be remembered as a good man, as a good Christian man, as a father, as a husband, and as a leader, and have my Marines, hey, I remember I worked for Captain Milstead. Yeah, he was blah, blah, blah. Or I worked for Major or Lieutenant Colonel. He was my squadron CO, and he always cared about us. Or he was my group CO, or he's a wing CO when we were in Iraq. I would like to be remembered for those sorts of things, the eternal things, the grace, kindness, joy, those sorts of things. Not, oh, he's a 3-star general in the Marine Corps and those sorts of things, but family. I think mostly my family more than anything.
Yeah, I love it. So I think the family's one of the most important thing in your life. So I love that answer. And yeah, I mean, as a leader, you kind of want to be remembered for those traits, of those leadership traits. Not that you were, squadron commander, but that you cared about your Marines and
Yeah.
spent time with them and all that. So that's great stuff. So as I think geography and where you grow up and how you grew up is real important to what you end up doing, and it kind of molds you and those sorts of things. So where did you grow up, and how did you get drawn to the Marine Corps?
Well, I'll go into this again, but again, we probably ought to tell everybody we were what, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes into this,
Yeah,
and my computer went black.
The computer died, so
my computer went black, and for a while it was like, well, I can still hear you, keep going, and then that ended. So thank goodness I have my wife, my technical advice here, so I'm my technical advisor, so I'm on her computer now, and we're back and we're going. But I grew up in the military. So, my dad was in the Air Force. And so I lived all over. So, I can say, I'm from Texas. I was born in Texas. And I guess I'm a Texan. If you're from Texas, you're always a Texan. But I live in North Carolina now. So I'm a North Carolina. But, my road was all over the place. I was born in Texas at Fort Sam Houston, Brooke Army Hospital. My dad was going to OCS, Air Force. I lived in Massachusetts. I lived in England. I lived in Miami. I lived in Cocoa Beach. That's where I started surfing, began my lifelong love of surfing. Lived in Virginia Beach. Graduated from high school in Taiwan. Went to college. My dad says, you got to go to college in Texas because we're Texas residents. And so I looked at a map and said, where's the closest place to the beach? And it was Houston. Not much of a beach, not much of surf, but in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So I ended up going there. Of course, I was always supposed to go there because nothing happens by mistake. That's where I met my wife, 42 years of marriage. And it just, so I went there, and then I was in a Navy program. I always wanted to fly. That's one thing I've always known my whole life. I wanted to fly, and never wanted to be a fireman, never did any of that, wanted to fly. And I was in a Navy program. And it was my senior year, and I'm walking from the federal courthouse in Houston, from the Navy office, and I'm walking by the federal courthouse, and there's one of those signs that's on the springs that goes back in the wind, and it had a picture of a guy in a flight suit with a helmet. It said, "The Marines are looking for a few good men to fly," and I went, "Whoa! I didn't know the Marines had pilots." And in this Navy program, there was a long backlog and all this other stuff. So this was like a month before graduating from college. So I said, well, I'll see what this is about. So I walked in there, office traffic, having had the recruiting command. This is quintessential office traffic. I walked in there. Captain Brown was his name. And by the end of talking to him, that evening, I called my dad and said, I'm joining the Marines. He said, you're what? I said, I'm joining the Marines. And to make a long story short, that was in August. And in January, the following January 6th or whatever, I'm standing there with in the snow with some really mean man. His face is about that far from mine, ripping me a new ass. And I'm like, oh man, I'm not in Kansas anymore. I'm in the Marines. And the one last thing I'll end with, I laughed about it. When I drove off a week prior in my pickup truck, my brother was standing there next to my dad, and he looked at my dad. He says, he'll be back in a couple months. And he laughs and says, and he came back 40 years later. So I did 40 years in the Marine Corps, but it started with that not inconsequential. Everything happens for a reason, but just past that sign on the federal courthouse of Houston.
That's amazing. So you had that kind of first impactful moment that brought you to the Corps, walking by that sign. So, and of course, you just said it, 40 years, you've had this long, illustrious, and very successful career I'll just say it, as a Cobra pilot. You'd go into a little bit more in it here in a second. But over that time, talk a little bit about individuals and situations that really had an impact on you. Kind of said, that someone said something, maybe some leader gave you some advice, you were in a situation that made you think. I mean, if there's some of these that kind of stick out to you, go over that a little bit.
I was fortunate again because my dad was a career Air Force officer, and he taught me a lot. He's still alive. He's 91 years old, 2 martinis or plus a day, but he's, but he taught me a lot. He taught me a lot about people and to take care of your people. And he used to call them non-coms, his NCOs. And he was smart enough to instill in me that when I went into the Marine Corps, I was smart enough to realize that you want to be a success, you better listen to your NCOs. You better, I can remember, I laugh and say I tell people the first job I had was working for a gunnery sergeant in my first squadron, but he didn't make me clean the floors or whatever, but he was good. He mentored me. And I think that started a career time. Listening to my NCOs, listening to people. We say all Marines are leaders, and leadership doesn't have a rank. Some of the most people that have had the greatest influence on me, some have been junior to me. And I think I was blessed to have had that attitude, and I mean, granted, I've had some senior mentors, but I've worked with some really great enlisted Marines and senior enlisted as I grew up that were, substantial influences on me, and would have just had their fingerprints all over me. And I think I was blessed to have been that way.
So you've done, and you were a pilot. So I mentioned earlier you were a Cobra
pilot. Aviator.
I'm sorry.
Aviator.
He was a aviator. So and then over your career, you flew. You were in the squadrons, but you also did some other took some other leadership roles and command roles. So compare the time, and I know all aviators love being in the cockpit. I mean, that's why you're love to have your hair on fire and doing all the things that aviators do. So talk a little bit about going through the squadrons as a young junior officer and moving up, and getting to that time in the aircraft, and then as you actually went through in your career and got more senior, you had some other real important billets and roles in the Marine Corps. So talk about your career a little bit. Give us that journey, kind of highlights of it there.
Well, a ready room, especially for young lieutenants, is like a pool of baby sharks. They're in there. It's same in a battalion. It's all those lieutenants in a battalion, extremely competitive. We're hard teasers. You get nicked a little bit and bleed a little bit, and everybody turns on you for a little bit, but you learn to thicken up the skin or whatever. And so, but I was initially a bachelor for my first in my first year and a half or so in the squadron. So you didn't have to throw rocks at me to fly. I was always hustling to fly. And I'd fly on weekends when we could, or go on cross countries. And I was flying a lot, and then got married. And my wife was in retail, so she was working on the weekends a lot. So I was flying a lot too. And did a second pump, did 2 pumps, and was just busted 1,000 hours as a lieutenant. And that's unheard of today. And then left the cockpit and went to Anglico. Spent 2 years in Anglico and loved that. Went to jump school and did all that stuff, and then came back to the squadron and was in the squadron until I was a selected major, a brand new major. And I was frocked because I hadn't really gotten promoted yet. And they sent me to Command and Staff College. So I went to Command and Staff College. And after Command and Staff College, the monitor said, you've been in the cockpit your whole life. You need to spend a little time out now. So I went to the basic school. That was one of my best tours. So I spent 3 years at the basic school. And those were 3 special years. I mean, you look at the guys that were there with me at that time. John Kelly, Louis Craparata, still around. Stacy Clarity, still around. Jody Osterman, and the list goes on. John Allen. But they sent me to Okinawa, the refresher training in the summer of '90. And I'm at 303 in California, going through the refresher training, getting ready to go to Okinawa when Kuwait goes down. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. You can't have a war and me go. So I started trying to get changed to one of the gun squadrons while I was there. And the CO on Okinawa said, no, he's coming to us. He's coming to us. So I spent the whole Desert Storm on Okinawa, miserable. And
I was at MCRD San Diego the whole time.
Yes. So you know how it feels. I was miserable. You can't have a war without Boomer Milstead, but they did. I ended up going and spending 3 or 4 months in northern Iraq, pulling the Kurds out afterwards. Came back, came to the squad, basically ended up in the squadron, was XO, then fleeted up to the CO. And I was fortunate, did that, then went to command and went to the National War College, enjoyed that. And then went down to MAG 29, commanded MAG 29, and got to take MAG 29 to the war. They chopped us across, and then we fought under Amos. Came back, did 4th MEB, then was going to get out of the Marine Corps. I was at 30 years, and it was time to get out. And I'd been looked at a couple times for general, and no big deal. Figured, hey, it's just time to go. And they weren't picking many generals. They were picking like 5 a year. And I think they went 2 years without any helicopter guys. And I was like, hey, it's just not my time. It's not me. And then General Amos, who was the MEF commander, said, we're looking for we downsized in Iraq. He says, we're looking for a post-command colonel, combat experience to take the wing to Iraq. And I said, but sir, I'm 30 years. He goes, no, we can extend you or whatever. And I was like, well, to make a long story short, I ended up doing it. And I got selected for brigadier general, like my 4th look, and spent that first year in Iraq, leading the 2nd Marine Aircraft Wing forward. Came back, did 2 years as the public affairs officer, then went down, did 2.5 years as the Marine Corps Recruiting Command, and then did my last 4 years as the manpower. All 4 years for General Amos as his manpower guy. So I have kind of an atypical career, especially in the latter parts when I got out of the cockpit, But I would say, probably one of my most enjoyable tours was the recruiting command, and that had nothing to do with flying. That was awesome, just being all around the country with young recruiters. Distributed ops at its finest. Enjoyed the basic school. That wasn't flying. But of course, being a squadron commander was special, and then being a wing commander and then a group commander in combat both times was something that I'll remember fondly as I sit on a rocking chair sucking on a fish stick as an old man. So that's kind of it.
Yeah, so just from my own curiosity, when you were early on as a JO, were you at a Camp Pendleton or were you at a
Yeah,
New River?
yeah, I was at that net. This was the big joke. First time I went to Pendleton was as the group commander, and they're like, "Oh God!" I was the first Cobra guy to ever command Mag 29. They go, "We got a West Coast Cobra guy coming to New River to command Mag 29." Oh my gosh! Um,
Okay,
I fell in love, as you can tell, because I'm still here
yeah,
with the Carolinas. I just fell
okay.
in love with North Carolina, and we ended up living in Wilmington. I love the town.
So you were either 169, 369,
169,
169.
169, baby.
Yeah,
I
I
was
know.
raised in 169 and I commanded 169.
Yeah,
So,
I hung out with some 169 guys during my year in Okinawa. In fact, I got a great ride on in one of my buddies. They're flying a Hueys, and we flew from Pohang
yeah,
up to this training area called the Pilsung Training Area.
Hillsong Ranges.
Pilsung Ranges, exactly.
Yeah,
We stopped in Taegu and picked up some bags from a Navy SEAL,
yeah.
and
Tegu. Oh my
Taegu,
God.
and then we flew literally 50 feet off the
Yeah,
deck
which is,
to you. He's having a great
yeah,
time like this.
totally illegal as shit.
It
But
was, and
yeah,
they were having fun. And then we get up to the Pilsung Range, and we stopped to fuel up at some, that little facility, and it was snowing.
yeah,
And then we went over, and they did a little this kind of scenario. We popped over, and some seals were out in the field. They came out of the jungle, whatever, the woods, and we threw the bags out. The crew chief threw the bags out to him, and we took off, headed to the coast. And the sun was going down, and we went back down to Pohang. It was a nice little ride that day.
yeah, yeah.
So
The
yeah,
Vipers.
yeah, 169 guys. So, well, good. So, I just to let everybody, I met you when you were commanding the Marine Corps Recruiting Command. Just to let everybody know, I'd seen this gentleman in like a button down shirt at church, and this guy with some short hair, and I go, yeah, he looks like he kind of be a military guy or whatever. And I was working in the Marsh building at the time there on Quantico, for those familiar. And I'm down in the PT, down in the basement, doing some PT on a life cycle. And you walk by, and I go, "That's the guy." I'm thinking to myself, "That's the guy from church." So I said, "Excuse me, I'm Joe Wallace." I said, "Do you go to St. Mary's Church?" You said, "Yeah," and I didn't know who you were. And you go, "Well, hey, I'm Boomer Milstead. I command recruiting command. Here's my card. Give me a call or send me an email." And I remember you invited me to the veterans group at church. Did
Yeah,
a did a couple of meetings. So that's how I met you. And then I used to see you, and I'll tell this story because I think it's kind of funny. But I was doing I was running triathlons at the time, so I was at the track at lunch, often doing some laps around the track, and you'd be out there, doing some PT. And I kind of told you one day, in a joking way, I said, "Sir, you're not supposed to take your shirt off out here at the track." And you said that you just wait for somebody to tell you to put it back on.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I'd laugh. I'd say, I don't think there's anybody on the base that was senior to me. I mean, the
That's
McCittick, see, I was the most senior guy on the base. So let somebody come tell me to put my shirt back on. And besides, then I remember I used to say, besides, tan fat looks better than white fat.
that's exactly what you said, and I was going to withhold that, but I told someone that story just recently because you would say tan fat is better
And
than
I'd
white
run.
fat.
I'd run without my shirt all the time.
You did,
Yeah.
you did.
Yeah. And
So
people would
when
say,
you
you're not supposed to do that. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, so you talked about the recruiting command, which you really enjoyed. So and I remember, when I first came to Microsoft, we visited the recruiting command and spoke to your like chief marketing guy, Rafael Hernandez.
Yeah.
And if you remember, so what was so because you mentioned it, so what were the things that were so kind of satisfying about commanding the Marine Corps recruiting command?
Well, we took the recruiting command. You remember, we raised the Marine Corps, what, 22, 25,000. We're supposed to do it in 5 years. We did it in 2.5. And Bless General Conway, they said, hey, for us to increase that kind of manpower that fast, we may have to lower standards. He says, no, we'll never lower standards. What it takes to be a Marine today is will take to be a Marine tomorrow. And God bless him for that. And we did it. We raised the Marine Corps, and we did it in half the time. And they're still today, they're still standing in line. Marines are the Marines, and people that aren't Marines, they just don't understand themselves as a means to something else. Join us for education, join us for, see the world, join us for this or this. We don't promise you jack shit. We promise you the opportunity to be a United States Marine. We sell ourselves as the destination. Join us and you'll be a Marine. And they line up for that. These kids line up, and they're still lined up. There's a waiting list today to join the Marine Corps. And even back then, when we were heavily moving to the sound of cannons, they were up. But I've always loved the young Marines. A busload of Lance Corporals can get in trouble and out of trouble and back in trouble before you even knew they were in trouble to start with. I just love them. And 65% of the Marine Corps, something like that's below the age of 25, were young service. But these were distributed. They were all out. They were in 5, 6, 7-man fighting positions all over, besides the 24 RSs that we had. And it was just a whole disparate group of young men and women from different MOSs and doing a very difficult job, but doing it very well. And the assistant commandant, then General Amos, he let my wife travel with me, and she was magic. She would talk to the wives, and she would get some insights that I would have never gotten about issues. So I really did enjoy that job. But one thing I'll tell you about it is, and then when I went to Manpower, so I said, okay, so I've been in charge of recruiting Marines. Now I'm going to have to learn to take care of them. And you've heard this for years and years. Manpower, actually, we're in the industrial age, blah, blah, blah. So when I first took over Manpower, I went on the road. I said, I'm going to go see how some major other corporations do their manpower. I went to Microsoft. We came out to Microsoft, remember?
Sure did. Yeah,
came out to Microsoft, talked to you and Chris Cortez, and we went to the New York Police Department. We went to, what were some other ones? We went to FedEx. We went to USAA. The USAA had me give a speech to their leadership university. It was a whole room full of people, and I introduced myself to them. I said, "Good evening. I'm 163-52111, or whatever my number was." And everybody howled. They knew exactly what I was saying. Well, we went to we went to about 6 other corporations, and you know what? We didn't have it bad. As a matter of fact, 2 of those corporations sent people to us later to learn how we were doing things. So, we were always the kicking boy, Manpower, you don't know how to do shit, blah, blah, blah. But I just thought I'd throw that in because everybody's always picking on Manpower.
Well, I'll get to Manpower in a second because I worked in Manpower for 2.5 years. So that's when I met you. But back to the time, you say you saw the flipping sign, back and forth, and you decided. So just to comment on that real quick, I did a tour at MCRD. I alluded to that earlier, and during my time as a series commander, we would sit down and speak for about 5 minutes to every single recruit when we had it scheduled throughout the whole 12 weeks. And I asked every single one of them, why did you join the Marine Corps? And boy, the stories were so different. From I'm sitting at McDonald's and girlfriend, the guy walks in uniform, and I see my girlfriend's eyes look at this guy person, in uniform like he's a super stud, and I got to be that. I mean, there's so many different things, Somebody influenced me at school, or was a coach, or whatever it might have been. So many different stories, and it's kind of interesting just to see that. But and then kind of to relate that to Marine Corps recruiting and how the Marine Corps advertises itself. Like when you watch TV and you see a commercial, it's not about what the Marine Corps is going to give you. It's about, can you be one of us?
That's right.
Can you meet the challenge? It's not like join the Marine Corps, get the GI Bill, go to the Marine Corps, say, good morning, First Sergeant. I mean, that's not what it's about. It's somebody climbing a cliff and saying, can you meet the challenge of being a Marine? And I think that, and the greatest compliment I ever heard from a fellow, from someone from a different service, it was an Army officer who had been with the Marines outside of Fallujah. And he said he spent time assigned to the MEF I think headquarters there. He was an Army civil affairs individual, and he said, "Joe, I'm glad you guys are on our side." That
Yeah.
was that was his greatest compliment because he saw what the Marines were doing in Fallujah, going building the building. But to the manpower, and as you kind of said here a second ago, it's not the sexy command, right? It's manpower and numbers and all those sorts of things. And as you greatly described it, from the recruiting side, finding Marines to taking care of them, so it takes care of Marines. In
Yeah.
my experience, I was a reservist who came back on active duty post 9/11, decided to volunteer and do what I could for the Corps during our time, post 9/11. And I did 2.5 years in officer assignments. And boy, you learn a lot in manpower. It really gives you a bird's eye view of the Corps. And I was able, in my position, to observe the command boards and
Yeah.
see how the commands were selected for battalion and for lieutenant colonel command and colonel command. And really interesting to hear the feedback from those board members and see how the process worked. And it was extremely fair, uh, and it was very just very eye-opening to see the process and to see senior Marines, as you put it, take care of the force of the Marine
Yeah.
Corps as a whole. So you came into to that position, and you did how many years there? 4 years as
Four.
4 years
Four.
as MNRA. So
Yeah.
wow. And so the whole tenure there and I recently I met General Amos and had some conversations with him in this past year. So that you were with him the whole time,
The whole
correct?
time. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
He retired me, and he retired 2 weeks, 3 weeks later. But yeah, I was the first guy that he, as commandant, nominated for a third star, and he retired me, and then 3 weeks later he retired. I was with him the whole 4 years, and it was an interesting time. It was don't ask, don't tell. It was a
Yeah.
lot of this stuff. It was the beginning of opening up the MOSs and trying to find some sort of a fair way that we could determine whether or not we could open up an MOS to the females. And it was just plus, we as the recruiting command, we taken the Marine Corps up to 227,000, right? And then it was my job once I got there. Now you got to take it down. Now you got to take it down to somewhere around 186, and you got to do it without losing, without maintaining fidelity with them. We just can't, we can't take a guy that's got 9 years of dedicated service and he's done well and show him the door. That's not right. So we have to figure out a way to do this right and to those were some good years though. I was surrounded by a great group of people. I had a great Sergeant Major Tony Adams almost the whole time, and just Cheryl Murray was my deputy the whole time. She was great. Had great people. It was Mike Applegate was back there, and old Mike Applegate, in the plans and the MP side and the MM side, worrying that you worked in, worrying about the, putting butts in seats and and things like this. But the width and breadth of that job was, if something's got to do with airplanes, you give it to aviation. If something's got to do with tanks or planes or where we're going to put forces or something, you give it to APP, right? It's got money. It's going to what? It's going to the money guys, But if you don't know what to do with it, what do you do with it? Give it to MNRA, So I had everything from the PX, right, to Wounded Warrior Battalion, to manpower, to all those sorts of things, And it was interesting though, and it really taught me a lot. Taught me a lot about people, and it was a good way to finish up.
Yeah, you look back on your career, like, as a junior officer myself and people I served with or know, several of them are general officers today, like Lori Reynolds and
Yeah.
and Jerry Glavy and Kevin Imes. These are folks that I known for 30, 35 years. And being there at MNRA, Rick Spooner there in enlisted assignments, we
It's been
served
there
together.
forever.
Yeah, and we served together at MCRD back in the late
Yeah,
80s.
yeah.
And great, man. So, well, what I'm going to get to too, and I would like to talk about your retirement here in a second. But what I'd like to discuss is so for those of you that know Boomer Milstead and maybe been to his office, he has a cool office. If you ever been to his office, there's a surfboard in there. There's some uh, memorabilia. There's some album covers. And
Yeah.
you're a scholar of pop culture, as
Yeah, yeah.
as
Pop
I'll
music.
give yeah I'll give you that title, scholar of pop music and pop culture, movies and all that. So, but no, and when you walk in your office, it's not what somebody would typically think a general officer's memorabilia looks like in an office, from a surfboard and a Green Day album cover and
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. So talk a little bit about that, because you are a surfer, which surfing's not just an activity; it's kind of a cultural thing.
it
People who
is.
surf, it's kind of it's a community, and it's the people who surf, it's a lifestyle to some extent, and and you mentioned earlier you got into surfing early at Cocoa Beach, which I've been to that area. Your father was probably at Patrick Air Force Base,
Yeah,
I assume.
exactly.
But yeah, and I've been to Cocoa Beach, great place, and some of the best surf on the East Coast. But yeah, tell me a little bit about
Well, I'm
your
still
kind of
that
your
way. What? I'm still that way. I'm 68 years old, and yesterday I had on I had a pair of white cords, blue tennis shoes, and a Hawaii print shirt. I mean, that's the way I've got my Vans. I wear my Vans. And people go out and they go, you know, um, you don't dress, you dress different, you know. But my wife sometimes would laugh at me. She'd say, when I get ready to go off somewhere, she'd go, "Hey," I go, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Don't forget, you're a general," you know. But yeah, it is a culture. It's just kind of it's more than a sport. It's kind of. But back to that office, yeah, I had all kinds of stuff in that office. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was getting ready to retire, I had about 8 young enlisted Marines that worked out in the outer office, clerks and stuff like this. And I called them all in. And I said, "Come on in, y'all." "Yes, sir." I said, "Okay. Starting with the junior man, working up to the senior man, minus that surfboard and that green,
yeah.
maybe this or that. Each of you can anything you want."
Yeah.
Oh, it was amazing.
Wow.
One guy he goes, I had this somebody had given me some time, pen and pencil set with the clock and all that sit on your desk. He says,
Right.
"I want that." I go, "It's yours." "Sweet." He picks it up and walks out. Another one's like, "Well, I want, can I have that like barrel and that gun thing that's hanging on the wall?" "That's yours." Oh, they take it out. But the one that was most unusual was this guy. I can't remember his name, but he was the biggest of them all. He's a big guy. And he was a corporal. And he goes, "I want your tanker jacket." And I said, "You want my what?" He says, "I want your tanker jacket." And I said, I hated that thing. So I was like, okay.
Oh, okay.
So I took that tanker jacket, and I said, "I'll even leave the 4 stars, the 3 stars on it. You just can't wear them with the 3 stars on there." And he goes, "Okay." And then I opened it up and I pulled out a indelible black ink, and I went, wrote inside of it, "To," I forget his name, "so and so. Thanks for all your hard work. Semper Fidelis, Boomer Milstead."
So that was it was the Boomer Milstead office giveaway day, right?
Yeah, yeah. It was so funny to watch what they would take. Some of them would take, and it was, I think one of them said, I had a large planter on the corner. Like, "Can I have that plant?" I said, "Yeah." I was disappointed that they were taking that plant. I was hoping to take that home, but man's word is his word. Yep, you can have that plant. Yeah, it was funny to see what they took.
Yeah, so that's awesome. And like I said, I love when I first saw your office, and it's all and of course you weren't going to give up the surfboard or the Green Day album.
No.
So the one thing I want to talk real quick, and you talked about it earlier, so you don't have to comment again on it, or you can if you'd like. you said, and you use, I think, this as kind of, as a leader, you should be walking the flight line. And I
Yeah.
think you use that phrase, and you mentioned it earlier, like you got to get out and meet your Marines, and you actually said it directly that when you took over recruiting command, you're out traveling, meeting your Marines, meeting the recruiters. When you went to MNRA, you not only met other Marines, you went out and met folks in corporate America and different organizations from government and private, in the private sector, to kind of see what you could learn from them, and actually what they learned a lot from them, from what the Marine Corps was doing as well. So I always love that. People say it differently. Walk your office space and meet your folks. You
Yeah.
being an aviator, you walk the flight line. So, and that's about getting out and interacting with your junior folks and listening to them and seeing, and you said that right away, as we started out. It's kind of, that's your leadership principle, is you get out and listen, and you care, and that's how you want to be remembered. So you retired, a few years ago, and you've been doing some different things. So how's retirement been for you?
Well, it started off good. I mean, did a little bit of consulting here and some of that real quick before you forget, talking with corporations, and talking to them about walking a flight line or walking the hangar deck or getting out around. Some of what I use, we as Marines, we know our leadership traits. JJ did tie buckle, and you can use that and you can walk down those things from justice all the way down to the bottom to enthusiasm, and you can hit damn near everything that ought to be going on in a boardroom or in some sort of a leadership thing, because those people all too often, and then I'll move on, but they mix up leadership and management, and I would tell them, you manage things, you lead people. There's two distinct things. You can be a good manager and a shitty leader, but you can't be a good leader without being a good manager. And I've worked for the first, and it's been miserable, but I've learned a lot. So retirement was good. Retired, and then one of the first things I wanted to do, was always my joke, was I wanted to go to Costa Rica surfing. So, and I've been twice now, but went with two longtime surfing buddies, and we went down to Costa Rica, surfed in Costa Rica, did some consulting, and did some stuff. And so I've been retired since the end of 14. So it's been right at 5 years, say 5 years. So the first 2 or 3 years was good, but then the last three have been, or 2 or 3 have been challenging with the health issues. I've had those back surgeries, and then my knees have been problem, and then I was most recently diagnosed with MS. Which they're not real sure it's MS, but it's light MS, and so it's and I'll get through that. I'm a Marine, and I'm not going to whine about it. We adapt, we improvise, and we overcome. But retirement has been good. I guess the big thing that I did not want to put on a coat and tie and go to work, for somebody, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, pick anybody in the defense industry. I wanted to kind of I'd done 40 years. I had a decent retirement. Want to do a little something with my wife, and so we did a little bit, and we had fun. And I've not regretted it. I've not regretted it at all. Would I have made a lot more money? Yeah, but you can't take money to heaven with you, right?
Not at all. Take
your kids with you, but you can't take your money. And so I've not regretted it at all. I've had a good time, and we're back down here in Wilmington now, and I'm really happy.
Great. Well, just for those looking, so before we started recording, Boomer let us know that there's some things going on in the home. That's why we're in the bedroom. So you know that was
that's right.
All good to go.
That's right. We moved back down here a couple of years ago, sold a house in Virginia, moved back down here, the house that we had in North Carolina, and we figured it'd be like a lily pad. We put half our stuff in storage, and we stayed here, and we started looking for our forever house. Well, we looked at 35 houses and spent a year and never saw anything that was neat. And so, as I've told you, in that line from Pulp Fiction, sitting on the front porch in a moment of clarity, it was, why don't we make this our forever house? Because there was the same neighbors. It was the neighborhood I'd gone to war in twice. They'd taken care of my family,
Yeah.
So we hired an architect. We had plenty of room. So we put 1,700 square feet in the back to include a pool.
Nice.
I got 9 grandkids and another one soon to be here, no doubt. And so, they're all got their pool on, their trunks on and their towels over them. Like, hey, Grampy, when's the pool ready? So here in another month or so, we'll have them back there in the pool. So this is our forever house.
Boomer? Did they call you Grampy Boomer?
They call me the
Grampy?
General. No,
General.
no,
They
no,
salute- they
no.
salute you?
It's funny you say that, but they call me Grampy, or the 2 youngest ones that were the 2 that live here. Yeah, they call me Bob. Bob. That my Zelly and Luke, my 4-year-old, soon to be 5, and my 2 soon to be 3-year-old. She walked by me the other day and she says, "Hi, Bob." I was like, "Hi, Zelly." She calls me Bob.
That's funny. Well, so well, awesome. Well, you've had a great career. I love the journey. A lot of fun. Sounds like you've had a lot of fun, which is what I want to have in life. I want to have a lot of fun, and I want to be, be remembered for being a good family man and husband and father. I love that entry point. So, for those folks listening today, is there any sort of advice? I mean, you did 40 years in the Marine Corps. You've been retired here for several now, and are enjoying retirement. You've worked with some corporations in retirement, and you still speak a little bit. And I've heard you speak, and without sounding like I'm sucking up, you're really great speaker, and you're very motivating, and you always have a great message. So, what message or advice that you have for folks who are listening today?
I did not to go through it. I did a interview. I think it's on LinkedIn. Did it with a guy, Adam Menler, I think it is. You can probably find it on LinkedIn or on Google. And I kind of give some points on some things, but I think the most important thing is always be yourself. Don't try and be somebody you're not. Be yourself. Keep your priorities right. Mine are simple. It's my faith. It's my family, and then it's the Marine Corps comes last. I used to tell Marines it's last. It doesn't mean that you're leaving work at 16:30. It just means every day. But it means if you can't give the Marine Corps what it needs and your family what it needs, then you need to get out of the Marine Corps, because your family comes first. And our families pay an enormous price. You know this, Shannon and the girls, for you to wear the cloth of your uniform, for you to have done what you've done. They have made some significant sacrifices, and they don't get credit for it often. So our families pay a big price. So remember and stay, enthusiastic. It's contagious. You lose your enthusiasm and it'll wrinkle your soul. My wife tells me sometimes, grow up. She laughingly says it, grow up. And I go, I got to grow older, but I don't got to grow up.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to get older, but I don't got to grow up. And stay enthusiastic. I mean, laugh like you're laughing now, and just, it's not always, there's no guarantees on the weather other than one day it's going to rain on you some. It's going to rain on us all, and that's the only prediction you can get. So just enjoy it, and that's the big things, I think. And just, love those that are around you, that love them. And if you're leading Marines or people at work or wherever you are, lead them like you'd like to be led. That's kind of the golden rule with camouflage on it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I like what you said. That in one of my previous podcasts, we talked about, your identity, because, Marines are Marines, and we're very proud of being Marines and everything. But I kind of really enjoy that you said, be yourself, and your family and your faith, all those things are super important. And the Marines aren't the number one or number two thing in your life. And I think some people you meet, it is everything. I mean, it's their full identity, and it's all they talk about. And they don't really, there's other things that are super important in your life besides being a Marine. And being a Marine is important. And as I said, we're all who are Marines. We're all very much, we're proud of that. But your family's important, even more so. And
it is, but but being a Marine though is men. and women, but you know, we identify ourselves by what we do, by what we are. You know, so for 40 years, Joe, I'd sit on an airplane and some lady, an old lady or somebody sit next to me, they'd say, you know, what do you do? And what was the answer? I'm a Marine.
I'm a Marine. Yeah.
I'm a Marine. Now, you ask somebody else, oh, I'm in the Air Force and I'm a fighter pilot, or I'm a this, or I do this, or you know, or I drive ships in the thing, or what do you do? I'm a Marine. Doesn't matter if you're a Lance Corporal, PFC, or a 3-star general sitting there, and the old lady says, young man, what do you do? And I go, I'm a Marine, ma'am. You know, well, you don't have that when you retire. So when you sit on the airplane and the lady says to you, what do you do? What do you know? Well, I used to be a Marine, but then I was like, whoa, too much. You know, I still, 5 years later, I haven't figured it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's,
but I hate to say retire.
Yeah.
I was a Marine. Yeah. I was a Marine, but then I haven't figured it out yet. So if anybody out there listening can come up with a good, what I was, share it with me, please. Because I haven't figured it out.
Yeah, I think the nice thing is when you say I'm a Marine, it's instant credibility. It's people know it right away. So, well, great. Well, that's all. So I appreciate your time today, sir. It's been a pleasure as always. I always enjoy having a conversation with you, and I know you've left some great lessons and some great stories for this, and we'll hopefully I get down to Wilmington sometime soon and check out the Shea Milstead with all the new additions and everything. Maybe see a few kids running around calling you Bob.
Yeah, well, you will. You'll hear them. And, you know, got a hot tub, got a fire pit. I'm telling you, Joe, it's life on this side of the Rubicon is not bad. You know, I do miss the fast and furious sometimes, but you know, it's a young man's game. It's time to move on and let somebody else do it. You know, I'm tired of getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. You know. Yeah,
right. Shaving and all that stuff you gotta do, right?
And you know, as we laugh, you know, it's evening cocktail, casual mornings and evening cocktails. But hopefully we'll do this again sometime. You know,
sure.
Maybe focusing on a subject or two or something. But
that'd be great. I'd love to have maybe just a conversation just about leadership or about mentorship or
we'll do that. Let's plan out sometime.
Okay, and I'll go out and buy me some white corduroys and a Hawaiian shirt. And we'll get uniform. We'll get uniform for it.
I got four or five pair of blue jeans. You know, there's something about a pair of blue jeans, white socks, blue tennis shoes, and either a T-shirt or one of my Hawaii print shirts. It's me. You know,
you talk about that growing up in line with surf culture. So I spent my early years living in San Diego, and I was very much like a beach kid as well. We were at the beach all the time. And my father was a Navy. He ended up retiring as a chief warrant officer. He was pretty, straight laced kind of person. And I always wanted to be in shorts and flip flops and T-shirts. So he called me a hippie every once in a while. I said I had too much California in me, but that's hey, I love wearing shorts and T-shirts. And hey, one of the great things I love about Microsoft is I can wear jeans and T-shirts to work, which is nice.
Never had that for 40 years though, but it's but the best pair of shorts I have, best two pair of shorts I have are the two summer and the winter and the green digitals cut off below the pockets and sewn. Those things last forever. They are great shorts. I never wear them around a military installation, of course.
Right.
But around town, they're great shorts.
Well, sir, we will do this again. And again, I appreciate your time. And everybody, thank you for listening to my veteran experience. And today with Lieutenant General Boomer Milstead. Thank you.
All right. See you, Joe. Thanks. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers.